Am I on? I think I'm on. Hey, good evening, everybody. Today is Wednesday, and this is a whiteboard. That means it's time again for Whiteboard Wednesday. Boy, I've been looking at the last couple weeks, and I want to just apologize to everybody. When Whiteboard Wednesday started, the intention was just to have a nice, short, quick little lesson that might be helpful about confusing topics, Bible translations, books of the Bible, timelines, things like that. And as I looked at the last couple weeks, I realized that as we've been tackling the book of Revelation, which is a tough topic, they've been going very long and maybe a little bit too long. And so I want to apologize to everybody. Hey, Carol, and Ed, if Ed's there. I want to apologize that I've been going long and would like to finish up Revelation today, and we're just going to get right. We're going to get down to brass tacks. We're going to get down to the brass tacks here, and we're just going to finish this thing up, and want to make sure we understand the main points, the big things to look out for, and close this thing up. And I want to just formally apologize to everybody for taking so long with this topic. It's been going on a long time. Okay, so we've been going through the book of Revelation, and we've talked before about, I just want to hit end times. I think that's the thing most people are concerned about. What's going to happen? What can we look forward to? What should we be on the lookout for? That kind of thing. That's the kind of stuff I want to talk about today. Now, we talked a little bit ago that there's not any, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution to the book of Revelation. It seems that every person has their own interpretation of what Revelation is going to look like, what's going to happen in it. If you would like to read I don't remember how many books are in that series, the Left Behind books. There's 13 books or something like that. If you like to read their interpretation of it, they have one particular interpretation of the book of Revelation. So as we're going through, I want to keep that in mind. But here, let's look at the timeline of events. I know we talked about this before, but let's see what's in store and kind of what the Bible is talking about in regards to end times. And luckily, because Revelation is so confusing, there are other places in the Bible besides the book of Revelation that talk about end times, and perhaps that may talk about them even more clearly, so we don't have to kind of wade through the symbols and figure out, try to decipher things that way. But here's I'm going to give the two main interpretations of how things are going to roll out. And again, this is just trying to interpret the book of Revelation. Here's a timeline here. Let's put us on the timeline somewhere here. Okay, so let's look at the two main ways people, and there are several main ways, but there are several ways people interpret the timeline of events, but let's look at the two main ways. So Jesus came and he died. We know that happened. Everybody's in agreement on that. At least you should be in agreement on that. And then the Bible says a few things that are going to happen. So there's the one interpretation is that here we are kind of in the meantime. There's this period of time since Jesus since Jesus was born, and since in where we are living now, we're just kind of waiting around for things to get going. The next thing then to look out for is the tribulation. Now, tribulation is just kind of a fancy word for times of trouble, times of distress and trouble. Now, there is some debate whether Christians will go through this period of tribulation. Some people think that Christians will be raptured out before the tribulation comes, and then there will be 7 years where things will get very bad. Now, I've talked before, I'm a little iffy on this. I think that Christians will be on earth during this time. And I'm sorry to say, it would be nice if they weren't, and I'll happily eat my words. But some people will call this the pre-trib rapture. They say pre-trib because it comes before the tribulation. Trib is just a shortening of the word tribulation. So we're gonna be raptured out, and then we're gonna wait for 7 years, and then we're gonna come back with Jesus, and Jesus will reign. Jesus reigns for 1,000 years. You can read about this in the book of Revelation, the Revelation chapter either 19 or 20. I don't have my notes with me. Hey, Rick. Good to see Rick. So the debate would be here. When is this going to happen, here or here? And there's even some, I don't know, maybe you've heard this, that people say it actually happens right in the middle of the tribulation. It's not a very popular view, but some people say there's a mid-trib rapture, where the Christians disappear in the middle of the tribulation, which would be 3.5 years through. Now it's interesting, if you read the book of Revelation, there is no 7-year tribulation. It seems counterintuitive to people. It's the same way that the Antichrist, the word Antichrist, is not in the book of Revelation. Neither is 7-year tribulation. There's 3.5-year groups in. Oops, that's not how you spell 3.5. There's 3.5-year segments all throughout the book of Revelation. There's a few of them, and some people kind of combine them up and lump them in and come up with 7. Obviously, if you take 2 3.5-year chunks, you're going to get 7. And some people also look at the book of Daniel. But it's interesting that there is no specific 7 years in the book of Revelation. Just a fun fact for you guys. So whether or not it's 7 years or whatever, let's just put tribulation. We all agree on this, that there is tribulation. Now let's erase all this stuff here. Okay, so here's the timeline. There's some question as to this rapture piece. But then there's the Jesus reigns for 1,000 years. And then you read the very tail end of the book of Revelation. It seems as though Satan is released. So as this interpretation goes, as Jesus is reigning, Satan is not tied up, but he's he's tied up. He's chained. There's another word I'm thinking, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. And then he's let loose at the end, and then very quickly after this, Satan is released and defeated. So there's kind of this final battle. If you ever heard the term Armageddon, that's where that comes from. Armageddon. You look at the very end of Revelation chapter 19, and I won't go into the meaning of that word, but, well, let me know if you're curious about that. And then after that comes in the judgment. I don't want to write. My face sometimes gets in the way. There's they call it in Revelation, the great white throne judgment, because Jesus is sitting on a great white throne and all the books are opened. And if your name is written in the book of life, great news. If it's not, bad news. There's the judgment, and then we go to new heavens and new earth. So there's kind of this, I've said it before, a resurrection. There's a resurrection not only of, like, you know how Jesus' body was resurrected. At some point in the future, God's planning to resurrect all of creation. Really fascinating. And we should maybe talk about that one of these times, exactly what that might look like. The new heavens and the new earth. And here in the great white throne judgment, Satan and death, it says, and hell are all thrown into a lake of fire. And it's kind of a curious thing that hell is going to stop at one point because it's going to be thrown into a lake of fire. So there's going to be the new heavens and the new earth and the lake of fire. All right. So there's the timeline. Now, Satan is bound. It's exactly the word I was looking for. Thank you so much, Carol. Satan is bound. Need to be bailed out. Okay, so this is let's say probably the most popular way of understanding the timeline here. Again, with the question of the rapture, everybody fights over the rapture and when that's going to happen, all that stuff. So, what's the other main way of interpreting the timeline? What's the other way of looking at this? Well, the other way of looking at this, and I shared this before, is this view is called premillennial. Do you remember? Yeah, I said pre-tribulation, pre-trib. That was we're raptured before the tribulation. The bigger question is in terms of this 1,000-year reign. Is this happening before this 1,000 years or what? This premillennial? Are we living before the 1,000 years? That's what this is. Now, if you read the Left Behind books, they're going to include the idea of the pre-trib rapture. And when you combine a pre-trib rapture with a premillennial viewpoint, then you get what's called, this is not exactly how it works, but it's called dispensationalism. Have you ever heard that? Phrase, dispensationalism. It's more of a bigger, broader view of the whole Bible, where they kind of look at there's different dispensations that God has worked through different people. So we can talk about that another day. So that's the one view. Again, if you take away this part, the pre-trib rapture, it's still premillennial, but so that's the one main view. What's the other main view? The other view is that it looks more symbolically at the book of Revelation. So the other view says that Jesus is reigning since the cross. So when the book of Revelation says that Jesus reigned for 1,000 years, this 1,000 years this 1,000 number is a symbol. It just means a long time. This view is called amillennial. And it's called amillennial because it's like this. We're not taking the 1,000 years literally in the amillennial view. So, like if you read in the Bible that the Lord owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, it doesn't mean like God literally has 1,000 literal hills that he has cattle on. It just means God owns everything. And in that sense, in the book of Revelation, when it says Jesus reigns for 1,000 years, it means Jesus has ascended to the throne and is now reigning. And the difficult maybe part to understand in this view is that because Christ is reigning now, what's also happening now? Satan is also bound right now in the amillennial view. So in this view, now you might look around at the world and say, well, it doesn't seem like Satan's bound right now. It seems like he's causing a whole lot of havoc. In the book of Revelation, it says Satan is bound so that he will not, so he could not deceive the nations. And so the amillennials will say, Satan is bound right now in the sense that Christ's church is able to spread through his kingdom. And so Jesus came and tied up Satan. They bound him up, and now Satan's kingdom is being plundered by Christ. That is, that God's kingdom came in, and now people are being saved, right? So in that sense, Satan is bound right now. He doesn't like it. And then when Jesus decides to come back, it's not a literal 1,000 years in the amillennial view. There will be a great turning away where Satan is released. And there will be a great falling away, and lots of people, it will be bad. This is the tribulation, again, over here in this view. But ultimately, Satan will be defeated, and the new heavens and the new earth will be brought in. So everybody agrees that all these things are going to happen. It's just kind of where you're going to place those things. Okay, so either way, though, whichever view you're going to look at, what's coming up is tribulation. Now, again, with the caveat that there might be it might be the case that before things get real bad, 7 years beforehand, Christians will be just pulled out of there. But even on this view, things are still going to get worse. There is a view, let me do a little asterisk. There is a view called post-millennialism that is not very popular at all, that says things are just going to keep getting better and better and better and better and better. But that's not a very popular view, and I'm not going to... Well, we'll go into that some other time, maybe. It's too much to talk about. I'm already waffling a lot. So what should we be looking forward to? Again, not looking forward to in the sense like, oh, I'm going to be excited about this. But things are going to get tougher. Now, Paul wrote to the church in Thessalonica, and this is in our Bibles, the second letter to the Thessalonians, and people in that church were wondering about what they should be looking for, and Paul gives a nice, helpful, very quick answer to that question, and it's not using symbols maybe as much as the book of Revelation would, so I'd like to read this to you. Here's a quick, concise thing of things to look out for, okay? Paul says, now the interesting thing at the time in Thessalonica was some people in the church thought that they missed the second coming. Did we miss the second coming? And they were worried, and apparently people were spreading this thing that like, hey guys, we missed it. Jesus came back, and sorry, we missed it all. Kind of odd thought to think, but that's what they were worried about. So Paul wants to write this, and in writing this, he helps us see what we're supposed to be looking out for. So he says, 2 Thessalonians 2, 1 through 4, concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, and again, everybody this is the second coming, right? He came once, he's coming again. Concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our being gathered to him, we ask you, brothers and sisters, and this is a good word for us today. Listen to this. Don't become easily unsettled or alarmed by the teaching, allegedly from us, whether by a prophecy or a word of mouth or by letter, asserting that the day of the Lord has already come. He says, don't be easily unsettled or alarmed by these people that are spouting these things. There's people that come and they say they're prophets, or they have a word, or they even have a letter that is supposedly from Paul. Paul says, don't listen to that stuff. Don't let anyone deceive you in any way. That day will not come, second coming, will not come until some things have to happen first. The rebellion occurs, and the man of lawlessness is revealed. Oh, interesting. The man doomed to destruction. He will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. So Paul says, listen, you know that hasn't been the second coming yet, because there's going to be a big rebellion. And we said that before too, right? There's a falling away. Some people call it an apostasy. Lots of people leaving the church. And this guy shows up. The man of lawlessness. Now, this phrase man of lawlessness, again, is not in the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation talks about those two beasts. Remember, there's the beast from the sea and the beast from the earth. And we looked yesterday that the beast from the sea seems to fit the description of the Antichrist, someone that is opposed to Christ and is wanting all worship for himself. This person, the man of lawlessness, sounds a lot like the Antichrist, in that he exalts himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped. So this man of lawlessness here, this person might be the same thing as the Antichrist, or maybe this guy, the man of lawlessness, is the person who is described as the beast from the earth in the book of Revelation. Now, I think this might be the case. I don't know. I think it might be the case because you remember when last week when we looked at the book of Revelation, this man of lawlessness points everybody to the Antichrist and wants everybody to give their allegiance to the Antichrist, or at least this beast from the earth does. And the thing about the beast from the earth is he appears to be some kind of religious, like this, he's a false prophet. And that's kind of what Paul says this man of lawlessness does. He exalts himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, and he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. So this idea, if we're going to look out for something, this is what Paul says we need to look out for. Somebody setting themselves up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. So watch out for this guy. Now, another question we might run into here, I wanted this to be quick, and see, this is the hard thing with end times. Everybody has so many different interpretations here. When Paul says he sets himself up in God's temple, does Paul mean a literal temple in Jerusalem? He could be meaning that, but I think more than likely, every time Paul uses temple in the New Testament, almost every time, he's not talking about the physical temple. What is he talking about? What is the New Testament talking about when it says temple? The temple is us. It's God's church. We are the temple now. So it's not like that his spirit is inside a temple. God's spirit is inside his church. It's inside of each and every one of us. Now, if that's the case, then this man of lawlessness is going to take some kind of authority over the church, that he's going to be from the church. He's going to rise up from inside the church. He sets himself up in God's temple in the sense that he's claiming to have some kind of religious authority of God's church. So it's either that or the temple has to be rebuilt and he's going to physically be in there. But I think more than likely, Paul's probably talking about us being God's temple, and this person is claiming to be some kind of leader within the church. So beware of this guy who claims to be from God, but it is not from God. Okay? That's what Paul wants us to be on the lookout for. And then as far as the timeline goes, well, Jesus is going to take care of it. But things are going to get bad when that happens. So be on the lookout for that. Now, again, in Revelation, what's my time at? I probably shouldn't go. The other two big things that people are worried about in the book of Revelation, remember there's the beast from the sea and the beast from the earth. And everybody needs to give allegiance to the beast from the sea, their whole allegiance. And so in order to show this, there is a mark of the beast. So people get a mark of the beast, either on the forehead or on the hand. And without this mark, you're basically not a part of society. You can't interact. You can't do any kind of, you're not allowed. You're cast out. This mark of the beast, what is this? Everybody wants to know what this is. What do we need to look out for? Throughout the years, people have thought the mark of the beast was everything from like, well, it could be anything, like social security numbers or receipts or the UPC codes. Some people thought that the man of lawlessness was the Pope, because he sets himself up inside the church and proclaims to be God. So that lots of people who were anti-Catholic thought that was that the Pope was the beast, and the mark of the beast was some kind of like allegiance to the Catholic Church. So, but anyway, there's hundreds and thousands of things that people think this mark of the beast could be. We just don't know. But throughout the Bible, here's some hints about what this could be. Something if you're wanting to know what you should look out for. Again, we're just going to go real quick because we're going to finish up Revelation today. This idea of a mark seems it's all throughout the scriptures, and usually in the Bible there is it's God's people who are marked as God's possession. So in the book of Deuteronomy, as God is giving the commandments and everything to God's people, God says, I want you to write these on your foreheads and inscribe them on your hands. That, like, the idea is that God should be on your mind at all times and in your actions. So that's the idea that God says over and over again throughout the Old Testament. Put them on your forehead, mark them on your hand. Put them on your forehead, mark them on your hand. Meaning that God should be on your mind and in your actions. Everything about you. Now, if maybe you saw an Orthodox Jewish person who would, read their Old Testament. Orthodox Jewish people take that command very literally, where they actually put a box on their forehead, and this box has a little verse of scripture in it, and they also put another box on their arms, so they can literally fulfill this idea that you should be marked out. I put a picture of it on here. If you've ever seen this, if you ever see this, this is kind of Orthodox Jewish. They call them tefillin, or phylacteries is another word for them. You'll see here's a box here, marked again on the forehead and the arm, signifying that it's on your mind and it's in your actions. Now, when Jesus came, he said, I don't mean you to literally do this, but that it should just be integral to you, who you are. And in the book of Revelation, God's people are marked out with the mark of the Lamb. If you want to read in Revelation 7 and Revelation 14, that God's people have the mark of the Lamb on their foreheads. And it means that God's people have given their allegiance to the Lamb. They're part of a different system. And then, just like I said last week, you remember how the dragon and Satan, he doesn't create anything new. He just kind of perverts what God has done. Then in Revelation 13, that's where we read the mark of the beast, where now people have to take the mark of the beast on their head or on their hand. And I think the idea is that people are giving their allegiance to this beast of the sea, this kind of this worldly, all-encompassing worldly power. So whatever it is, there's two marks in the book of Revelation. Nobody talks about the mark of the Lamb, but that one's just as important. Either you have the one and you don't have the other. You either have the one or you have this one. And the book of Revelation, I think, is asking, are you going to join in with the way of the world and give up all your convictions and concerns and give up your life that is dedicated to God so that you can fit in with everybody else, so that you can fit in with this worldly system of power? Or are you going to be set apart from the world? Because the people that have the mark of the Lamb, their names are written in the Lamb's book of life. People who take the mark of the beast, it's not there. So whatever this is specifically, the idea seems to be it's something that would signify your allegiance to a worldly power instead of staying faithful to the Lord. There's that. The other thing that people ask about is the number of the beast. The beast had a number, and his name comes to 666. It's too much. There's too much to talk about. So same thing. People kind of calculate out numbers, and if you take the alphabet and you give A means 1 and B means 2 and C means 3, maybe it comes out, and maybe it could mean. I heard somebody say, well, it's Bill Gates. Could be Bill Gates, or Henry Kissinger was a popular one. Henry Kissinger is the mark of the beast. I don't want to get into all that stuff. John says if you let people carefully understand this, his number comes out to 666. Now, what historians will say is, if you take, and it's just another idea, but if you take the Greek letters of Nero, who was the emperor at the time, So you take his title was Caesar Nero, and you take his name in Greek, and it adds up to it does add up to 666. So it could be just a symbol of this person who is just exalting themselves up above everything, and again, another symbol of worldly power. But I'm not going to sit here and speculate about all these numbers and things like that. I guess I'm not smart enough for that. But Caesar Nero, his name did add up to 666. So again, if that's the case, then Caesar Nero, Caesar Nero is just another example of someone, a system of the world's power that wants to have allegiance all to himself. And certainly when you look at Caesar Nero, if you ever heard about this guy, he did some terrible things to the church and persecuted lots of people and was really a nut job. Guy was a kook. How do we live through all this stuff? Whether we're going to live through it or be raptured from it, how do we live through all this stuff? This is also written in the book of Revelation, and I'll close with this. Here we go. Revelation chapter 12 talks about how God's people live through all the attacks of the enemy. Here's how the church triumphs. They triumphed over him. They triumphed over the enemy by three things. One, the blood of the Lamb. Two, by the word of their testimony. And three, they did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. So here's the weapons that the church has that Satan cannot overcome. First big one, the blood of the Lamb, the sacrifice of Jesus, right? Something the enemy cannot take. That's our main weapon. Two, the word of their testimony, what God has done for us. Nobody can take that away from us. And three, they did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. Now that one's not fun, but it's a question of allegiance. It's a question of faithfulness. Are we faithful through everything the world throws at us? Even if the world turns more and more away and it gets harder and harder to be faithful to Christ, if Christians are faithful to Jesus to the point that they're faithful, to the point that they don't love their lives so much as to shrink from death, like if following Jesus is more important to them than anything in their lives, including their own lives, then that's how the church triumphs. That's how they triumphed over him. They had a saying back when Nero was the Caesar in Rome, when he was the ruler and he was killing Christians left and right. The saying was, Nero was trying to stomp out the church by physically killing them. And the saying was, the blood of the martyrs, is the seed of the church. And what they found when Nero did that was the more Nero stamped out Christians, the stronger the church got. The more people saw that their faithfulness to Christ through the worst persecutions, the more people actually joined the church. And so instead of stamping out the church and losing to the church, that's how the church thrived. That's how you got from just 120 followers of Jesus on the day of Pentecost to millions of followers a couple hundred years later in the Roman Empire. That in fact, the whole Roman Empire becomes Christian because of Christians that stood on the blood of the Lamb, the word of their testimony. They did not love their life so much as to shrink from death. Great examples for us today to be faithful to our Lord, to be faithful to the Lamb. And and if we are, our names are written in the Lamb's book of life. Let's see here. What's coming? What else is coming, did I say? So Satan is released. One way or the other, things are going to get tough. There's going to be a falling away, but Satan will ultimately be defeated. The judgment comes, and then the new heavens and the new earth. And and there you go. That's the end of it. So answered a lot of stuff. I questioned a lot of answers, and I answer a lot of questions. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat. Pop them in there or email them to me, and we can look at those. But for now, I think we're going to close the book on the book of Revelation. And sorry it took so long, and sorry it spread out over so many weeks. But it's a tough topic, but it's good to know. Like Paul says, you hear words of things happening by these prophets or these words. Don't be easily unsettled or alarmed. These things are going to happen. Jesus said when Jesus talked about his second coming, you're going to hear about wars and rumors of wars. You're going to hear about false messiahs and false prophets. But even then, he says, the end is not coming yet. These things all have to happen. But make no mistake, there's a day set, and Jesus is going to come, and he's going to take care of everything. So that's good. That's good news for us. All right. Take care. God bless. Stay strong. Stay safe. We'll talk to you.